Well, it's Tuesday and I'm back. Thought I'd talk to you a little bit about a house that I'd sold that my wife and I bought when I first retired. Well, we both bought it. uh, and we put our heart and soul in it, and then we sold it on a private contract, what they call a land contract, and it's registered with the county, and the name of the buyer as well as holder of the deed appears on the deed. And it was all drawn up by lawyer. Everything was done according to the state laws. My advice is it's one of the safest ways to do it. One reason is it protects the buyer, but it protects the seller as well. The laws keep everybody honest to a certain extent, but it just sometimes takes you a while to get everything done. The couple that bought it, actually they were, and that's what they were a couple. They weren't married, but they did have children together. The oldest child was, I think, 19, and I think the youngest was maybe 4 or 5. There was 2 of them about the same age down there, 4 or 5, and I think one of the girls was 14. So they were kind of spread out. The 19-year-old had been married and had a child, so she was going to be in and out of the house whenever. Anyway, the selling on the contract said they couldn't rent the property out to somebody else or lease it. If they were going to sell it, they had to pay it off before they sold it. They couldn't sell it to somebody without paying off whatever was owed on the property. And I had it fixed up so that I paid taxes on it, and then they would have to reimburse me on a monthly basis. And that is one of the safest ways, because if you sell something on a land contract and they don't pay the taxes on there, someday you're going to end up maybe losing the house to somebody buys the taxes. I mean, you have to keep on top of it. And when you get to my age, you don't want to forget about what's going on out there. Finances can get away from you as well as contracts. So keep that in mind if you get up in there and you do something like I did. And by the way, it's not exactly a good thing to do something like that. You don't know how long you're going to live, so the contract itself may outlive you. And my wife and I kind of figured that could happen, and so we figured our children would benefit from the balance of whatever was owed on them. After we passed away, it's no big deal. It's just business, is all it is, as usual. Nothing big. Anyway, every once in a while I'd get behind a little bit, and I'd have to give them a phone call. And they'd make up the difference. And the girl, or the woman, she was actually a woman, was I believe she was a CPA. She was very knowledgeable. I think she had a degree in business of some kind, and worked at a pretty good place, had a good reputation. Unfortunately, it wasn't too long after they purchased the house, she lost her job, and I don't know why. I didn't ask. But she was able to get something else, but it just didn't pay as much, and it was a little harder on them to make the payments. Now, I had the payments down less than they would have paid for rent. Okay, you're talking about a 3-bedroom house with all new appliances, new furnace, new floors, new carpet, new inlay, new. I mean, this new roof. That house was set for 20 years without having to spend money on it, but they'd never owned a home before, and so this was their first one, and they were getting their feet wet. And they didn't know all the ins and outs, but there's a lot of scams out there where people try to sell you things, and they were having trouble with their furnace, and they called up and said, hey, they had trouble with it. And I said, well, the furnace, it was brand new when you moved in. It should be okay. And I gave them the name again of the guy that put it in. And they had a book there with everything in it, telephone numbers, warranties, all that stuff. I said, you give them a call. I said, if it's under warranty, they'll take care of it. But I said, they're reasonable in cost, just do it. And pretty soon they called me back and I said, well, this other furnace wasn't going to cost them much. And they would like to have the new one put in if I didn't have a problem with it. And I said, well, if they're going to put a lien on the property, I have a problem with it. I said, you have a clause in there where no liens. And if you get a lien on the property, you're going to forfeit it. I said, I will take the property back. I won't allow you to put liens on it. So they called the people back, and she called me back and apologized. Said, yeah, they would have had to have put a lien on the property to put that in. And I figured then it was a scam. Not by the property, the people that were buying it from me, but the people that were going to put this new furnace in. I mean, they'd have walked in there, they'd see it was a high efficient furnace, there was nothing wrong with it. But they didn't solve the problem of being able to get it going, right? So I took a trip over there, and the only thing it needed was a battery and the thermostat. And it was a programmable thermostat, but the cover, you had to pull it off, which wasn't a big deal, it just snaps off. And the little AAA battery goes in there, you put that in there. I showed them how to run it, and I got their book out for me, and I showed them where it was in the book for the thermostat. It was a separate piece of paper from the furnace itself. And it handled the air conditioner as well as the furnace. And then I checked the filters to make sure they were changing them. And they were changing the filters, so at least they were doing that much, right? Then you shouldn't have to worry about a house after you sell it. You should be able to just walk away from it. But they seemed like a pretty nice couple. Well, a couple years later, apparently they had some personal problems come up, and they split. And like I say, they'd been together quite a while. I think by then they had close to 20 years in. And the payments were way behind. And of course, I gave them a call, and I was starting to get a little upset. And I got a hold of her first. She was living in another town by then, and she gave me her story, and I said, okay, well, and then the last payment she made was a big one, and she said, I thought it would take care of it for a while. Well, I said, right now you're a good 3 months behind. And I said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to move back in, or are you guys separated, or what's the deal? And she said, well, we'll never go back. I said, okay. I just didn't know. And they had split custody for the younger children that were still minors. So then I visited with the guy that bought it. For all purposes, his name was Mike. And he assured me that he wanted to keep the house if possible. And so I explained to him, I said, well, the house is in both your name and her name. And I said, I don't want a problem here with the finances. So it's going to be up to you. If she signs off the deed, that'll be fine. I'll foreclose on that portion of it, and I'll redo the contract just for what's owed on it. No more. You just have to catch everything up. And he said, no problem. I said, okay, well, I went to the lawyer, got it contract redone, and a couple of weeks went by and nothing, right? This is a simple little 1, 2, 3 day deal. It's not a big deal to reassign the contract. But you have to have your titles right. Everything has to still go through your county for your assessor. Well, I did that, and finally, I called her up and asked her what the problem was, and she said, well, Mike hadn't brought her the paperwork. I said, okay, so I called Mike up, and I said, well, Mike, you got 24 hours. If that paperwork isn't up here and in my lawyer's office, I'm going to proceed with eviction. I had to think right away. Next morning, I got a call from the lawyer, said, hey, everything's in order. The contract's ready. Let's get everybody together. So we went in there, got it all squared away. He had to come up with a few bucks. He did do that. He got his receipts. And the new contract, I got it where he could lower the payments because, the finances were not, it was in a bad time. And meanwhile, by the time I got all this straightened out, by the way, it was something like 8 months in arrears by the time we had all the legal stuff straightened out. And part of it was due to COVID, but it went through the holidays. We were back into the springtime, and it was, let's go get something done. In the meantime, he was supposed to fix some things on the house that he let slide, and the contract said that the house had to be kept up to original condition. This house evaluation at the time was right just under, barely under 100,000, so it wasn't like it was just a cottage. It was not. It was, this house is in very good shape. It was considered to be in excellent shape by the auditor when they did their little assessments, their assessor, when he went by. About 2 months later, no payment again. So I gave him a call. Well, by then, I had a neighbor call me up that lived over there, and I knew all the neighbors because over the 5 or 6 years that I spent remodeling that place, I got to know everybody in the you know, within a block going in just about every direction. And said that there were some problems over there. He thought there was being some illegal things going on. There were some dealers in the area, he said. And I said, okay. I called the guy out and I said, you know, what's our problem here? And he said, I promise you I'm going to have this payment taken care of. I said, don't make a promise, make payments, get them up. So I don't want any more calls from the neighbor, and by the way, the cops called me. I said, get straightened away. You got some problems with the city. I said, the record isn't looking good right now. And the police are a little upset with me over this house. I said, so we're going to straighten it out, right? He said, oh yeah, no problem. So a little more time went by. I got more calls and no payments. I went down and I had to talk to the police because of the complaints that were going in there, because of the illicit business that was going on apparently in the house. When I went by it from the outside, it didn't look too awful bad, but there was numerous bikes around there, and it looked like there was a bed outside, and a Davenport and something else. I can't think of what else was out there. But they had accumulated a couple of fines over the mattress in Davenport out in the yard, and it was against the house. And when I talked to the police, they explained to me that there were several homes in that town that they had been watching, and mine was considered a flop house. Well, you know, I don't know if you realize how much damage happens to homes like that, but it is unreal. This time, I went back to the lawyer. I said, go ahead and serve the papers, eviction papers on him. And I'd already worked it out with the police that when I went over there to clear the house, they were going to be witnesses. They weren't going to help me clear it, but they would be witnesses to that. I said, okay. So they had to have a 60-day notice, and then I had to serve another 30-day on them. So I had 90 days from the time they were served that first time. And then on the 90th day, happened to be Father's Day, I think it was, or something. So I gave him another week. Now, meanwhile, I had been in touch with not him personally, but somebody in the house, apparently. And we got to make sure the server had served all the paperwork, I had the videos of when it was served and the people that were there at the time, and also their names and the spelling and all that. It was all in place. So finally, I wasn't having any luck getting the house cleared, and I went over and talked to the police, explained to them what time I would be there. The neighbors all said that they would be witnesses when the house was cleared, which was fine. And I went in there, knocked on the door. The person opened the door. I asked what their name was and walked through the door. I went on in and said, this house was supposed to be vacant. Everybody here is trespassing, and I want you to get out immediately. Now, I'm telling you, I've never had to do that to somebody. some of these people, uh, they were in such a state that some of them really couldn't have pronounced their name. And there was blankets over all the windows. They were all nailed up and whatever they did to keep them on the wall at the time. There was garbage in the kitchen part way up the wall, and it smelled bad. Now, the water had been shut off for a couple weeks, and I didn't know that. So you can imagine the odors that were coming out of that house. And when I went out to the garage, it was full all the way to the ceiling with garbage. Now, before the water was turned off, they had been, part of the water thing is garbage pickup. And so I couldn't figure out why they didn't have garbage pickup. Well, what the city told me was they probably didn't want anybody to know what was in the garbage because of the type of place it was. Now, illicit business in a house can be a big deal. Plus, if they're manufacturing anything in there, you get hit pretty hard because it has to be, hazmat people have to come in and remove anything that might be in there. And the police were going to do the walkthrough on the house to make sure everything was clear and that it wasn't, there wasn't any problems with open containers of things that shouldn't be there. And there was evidence outside, but nothing in the house. Okay. There was, I think it was 12 people living in that house at the time. And I got calls from one of the neighbors saying, hey, there's people boiling out of your back windows out there. Rather than go through the front where the police were, they went out the back. And I guess the police knew most of the people that were there because of past history. Well, I got all the threats, the death threats, all that kind of stuff, and ignored it. I just kept clearing the house, getting it out, made arrangements so that the guy that was supposed to be purchasing it could come back at a later date with a truck and get everything out. There was others in there that wanted to come back later and get stuff. I said, well, you can't do that, but you can get with Mike, and on the day that he brings his truck in, I'll allow you guys to come in, take your stuff, and get it out. Meanwhile, if you come back, you'll be trespassing. And conveniently, Mike lost the keys to the house, right? I wasn't too happy on that. And two of the bedrooms, there's 3 bedrooms there, but 2 of the bedrooms had big padlocks on the outside. And he said, I don't want you in them rooms till I come back and clear it. And I said, it doesn't matter what you want. This is my house. And you're trespassing, you get out. And I said, I'll take those locks off. And of course he threatened lawsuit, and I said, please do. There was all kinds of, I'm telling you, the threats were horrendous. I'd never seen anything like that before. The people that had asked back in to get some things, while I was standing there, I said, go ahead, if you have backpacks, whatever. For the most part, a lot of them were people from the street. He was renting them out for some of the illicit things. And none of them were, I don't think any of them were employed at the time. It took a long time for all this to happen. The legalities, the legal fees. To make a long story short, the damage in the house came to over $30,000. Every door in there had a hole in it of some kind. Either they kicked it in, or they had looked like their fists through it. These were hollow core doors. They were all brand new when this guy moved in. All the trim was brand new. The damage in there was, the only carpet left was in 2 of the bedrooms, and it was almost black. The carpet that was in the house at the time was a light tan. The inlay that was in the kitchen was, parts of it was missing. I don't know what happened. Some of the fixtures were busted up. The water being off, you can imagine what the bathroom was like. There was a utility room that somebody converted into a bedroom. It was only big enough for like a mattress from wall to wall in there, really. And that was there. So the only way they could get in and out was through the windows and through the front door. once I got everybody cleared, then outside there was a few stragglers. And once the cops left, one of the stragglers wanted to come back and do some business. Now, luckily, I carry. I have a concealed permit, and he decided he didn't want to tackle. He went on his way. Well, that day I screwed the doors shut. Okay, cleared the utility room so that I could get in and out of there, and I screwed that back there through the screen door, which really doesn't hold anybody out if they really went out, but screwed the screws through there. And went home. And I got a call at, I think it was 1 in the morning, that there was trespassers on the property. The police, I said, well, do you want me to come over there? And they said, well, let's see if we can find them. And the trespassers disappeared. Well, I didn't know it, but they had disappeared by going through a window. Cop said he thought the property was clear, but it wasn't. I went back the next day, took all the screws out, and I was putting locks in the doors, changing the locks out in the the side door and the front door. And I heard a noise in the back. I thought, boy, that's strange. And I hadn't taken the padlocks off those two bedrooms back there. So I went around the side of the house, and I didn't see anything there. And like I say, the windows were, they had blankets over them so you couldn't see in. And I figured, well, I'm going to go worry about it. I went back in there, and more noise. So I took the padlock. I had to bust the padlock loose off the door, the way they had it on there. I pushed the door open, and there was somebody laying on the bed. It was a female, and she was incoherent. And I figured, oh shoot, she's dying. She's overdosing. And I didn't go back in. I tried to question her a little bit, and I flashed my light in the room and didn't see anybody. I called for an ambulance, called 911, and they sent the police got there to assess it before an ambulance could get there. And by then, he found a second person in that bedroom. And they're yelling and screaming started. And this guy was going to kill somebody and all kinds of stuff. They finally got the situation calmed down, and we got him trespassed. And I didn't put him in jail. I just got him out of the house. And the whole time, this guy has said he's going to come back and do a number on me. And the cop says, do you want me to go ahead and make this all official? And I said, no, just get him out of here. I said, he's not going to do anything once he's out of here. At least I didn't think he would. Like I say, I carry. I'm not really worried about somebody attacking me. So I got him out of the house. And then I had one more visitor come back around that was going to try to get in there. And of course, I run him down the road. The full count, by the time I got done, there was apparently about 15 people had been living in there. The woman was high on drugs. It was in there when I opened that door, apparently, and was having a hard time talking and walking. And I suspect she was probably around 30 years old. Really a mess. I hadn't run into that many people in one area before like that. The only thing I can tell you is if you put somebody on a contract, people change over time. And somebody you think is going to be okay, that has a family and the whole works, when they split, sometimes one or the other one, there's a reason why people split. They can't get along. But when they split, usually one or the other has a major problem. I should have probably went ahead and just foreclosed on the house in the first place. But he had 50-50 by the paperwork. I mean, he showed me his paperwork that it was a legal separation that had to be served on him. And the children were going to be 50-50 cared for. He had them 50% of the time, and she did. I had hoped that this guy was going to be right. Well, meanwhile, and I didn't know it, but he lost custody, complete custody, because of his illicit dealings that he was doing, and he had been caught stealing from a local Walmart. He actually stole one of their iPhones off the counter. And their customer was there. He grabbed the iPhone thinking he'd get away with it. They got him on camera. And that was a pretty good sized fine, by the way. And it didn't go against the house. It was strictly against him. There was other fines against the house, and it was mainly garbage and things like that. And some of them were yard, not taking care of the yard. If it hadn't been for the police, I probably would have had a hard time. I would have hired somebody. It would have been, let's put it this way, the people that came out of there felt the whole world owed them something. So I've had to deal with people that have mental issues. Now, I didn't chase anybody down. This is the first time I've really talked about it on the internet. All I wanted was to get my property back. I could have went after Mike for all the damages that were done. I could have got after him when some of it was definitely criminal damage. And I could have went after him for not making the payments on the place. He owed the money and didn't pay it. And he never would, I don't think. And it wouldn't have, what good it would have done for me to chase him down in a court of law and make his life miserable. I could have taken a piece of his check from now on until I got some of that money back. But what it would have been is a mental stress to me personally. Their thing is, you can't get blood from a rock, so why pursue it? You have to take your loss and think, well, I learned a lesson, rather than going full blast. And now, knowing how I handled this, at the time I did what was best for myself and my wife, and that was get this headache out of there. I was getting too many complaints from the city and the neighbors and everything else. It was somebody that had issues because of the illicit things that they were doing. Being a dealer of that type of thing, sometimes there's no going back. The guy didn't have money to pay for rent, or not rent, but pay the payments on the house, but he had gold chains and all kinds of jewelry on him, right? What a mess this place was. And it was not in a poor neighborhood. It was a good neighborhood. There were some neighbors that were upset with me, but once I got it cleared out, they were not anymore. When I sold this house, it was damaged so bad it was going to have to be gutted. It needed all new windows, all new doors, including the exterior doors. Even the thermal panes were broke. I have never seen a house this far devastated. I sold it with junk that was in the house, junk that was out in the yard, garage. Like I said, the garage was full of, I don't know what all was in there, but it was garbage bags full of stuff. And I got a little over $12,000 out of the place. I got what the property would be worth less the cleanup. It was a bad deal. It really was. My wife and I, the whole thing, I mean, it was going to cost at least $30,000 to fix it. We were about that. He owed about that much more on it. It was a lose-lose situation no matter which way I turned. Now, as far as my original investment and everything that I had in it, I didn't break even, not even really close. It's unfortunate, but you're never too old to learn a lesson, right? The reason I sold it instead of fixing it, which there's no way I would have fixed it. I would have just demoed it and clean, sold the lot separate. We just didn't want to have to go through what it takes to remodel a house. I have a hard time keeping up with the house we live in right now. I mean, let's face it, about every 20 years you end up having to almost rebuild your home because things go bad. I'm looking to I think my furnace right now is 16 years old. I had it all reworked just before I retired. My roof is the same age. All my appliances are that age. When I look at all that stuff, I say, "Oh, do I want to do it to a house sitting out there 35 miles away and then try to resell it? No." So I took my 12,000, put it in the bank, and felt that worry is all over. And quite frankly, the relieving of the stress at the time was worth the money. It really was. And I've never tried to recoup it from the guy. He's going to go down the road thinking, well, I got away with that one, which is fine. The stress relief of just not having to worry about it was great. Now, this guy threatened lawsuits and all kinds of stuff, and I knew it was all baloney, especially since I had done everything by the letter of the law. And the police were involved for over 3 months before I ever did it. I mean, everybody that was everybody was A-OK. And during the time that I was clearing the house, there was multiple police officers come over and visited the place to make sure that we weren't overwhelmed in any way. And the officer that was there, he's one of the captains in the force. Very nice guy. Probably one of the best police officers I've ever seen. Very conscientious, and everything went well. Everything went well down at the station when I explained what all I was going to do that day. Yeah, I felt bad having to do that to somebody, but also relieved at the same time. Now, part of the reason that I wouldn't pursue somebody on this, and I could make somebody's life miserable for it. Mentally and Christian-wise, it's not worth that. You can't get blood from a rock. And so to continuously go after somebody like that, you can't change them. Why lower yourself to that level? If you just had to figure out you made a bad mistake, and you have to go on with life if you want to enjoy a good life. I kind of told you all this mainly so you could understand how I feel about things. I realize that there's laws in place that I could pursue and try to get reimbursement, but none of them would guarantee that I'd get reimbursement. But it would allow me to make this man miserable, and maybe his children, because there's no way. I mean, I don't know if he was to start making payments of any kind, if he even got a job, he would starve to death. He wouldn't be able to. I'm just telling you, you just cannot go make that extra step. You have to follow your heart, and as much as it pissed me off at the time, I had to let it go. And that's how I am on life in general. I don't necessarily give up. I make a decision, and I base it on what's best for my wife and I, our future, and will it fit our Christian values. Now, everybody has their slant on Christian values. And some people will pursue others to the grave. I won't. My grandmother didn't teach me those things. My grandmother she was like a saint. And her teachings have guided me out of some of the worst circumstances I can think of. I hope that some of you will feel along those same lines. I'm no fool, but you have to make decisions that fit your nature itself. You can't follow others. Now, people that gather around and watch criminals to do something and they don't do anything about it. That's not good. They're looking for the action, okay? That doesn't mean you have to throw rocks and make these people bleed. It means you have to get authorities there, or you have to subdue them until they can be taken care of through legal means. That's all that means. You don't have to let people slap you without and then turn your cheek neither. There's nothing wrong with returning violence against violence, but you don't want to pursue it to the point where you're pursuing it on their level. Keep your mind about you, your wits about you, make smart decisions up here. Make sure you're doing it the right way. Man's laws don't make it right. The Lord, listen to the Lord. Listen to your conscience if you have one. Not all people have a conscience either. The people that don't can really fool you because they don't mind lying about things and they're very good at it. And a lot of those people have charisma so that you'll follow them. Don't be a sheep. Stand up on your own 2 feet. Make your decisions based on good decisions, on good knowledge. Look at the situation. With that, I'm going to let you go. I've been on here 36 minutes. Some of you probably already said, to heck with this. I'm not going to listen to any more. My next one, let's see, I'll try to think of another story to tell. This is not a fictional story, by the way. This was a true story. True story. I had fun doing the house, so it's it's just one of those things. It's part of your life. And I'm glad that I didn't have to have all that in my pocket. It'd be terrible if you lost it. A long time ago, I learned that it's better off not to loan money. My own children, if they needed something, rather than if they couldn't borrow it and it was really a necessity, I didn't mind giving them some money. But I wasn't their banker. I pointed them in the direction of a banker whenever it could be. If there was a problem and they had to have something, I didn't mind being a provider for that. That's part of being a parent, that's all. But I wasn't going to provide their living for them once they were able to work for themselves. They had to go out, get work, do all those things that are necessary. And I was very careful about not intervening in their marriages. Those are private between two people. And I darn sure wasn't going to get tangled in those messes. Those will get you in more trouble than you can think of. My kids did okay out there. I'm glad, they lived their life the way they wanted without intervention from me, and did well enough. They all had a work ethic, and thank the Lord for that. With that, goodbye. See you later.